Good morning, everybody. This is episode 3 of the Topical podcast. My name is Gardiner, and is Google getting into bed with Chinese censors? Plus, California's lobbyists score a victory against the right to repair. Nvidia hides behind non-disclosure agreements, and so much more. Let's get to the good stuff. So, my friend Raven was supposed to be on the podcast today. I don't know what happened, he just kind of disappeared. But he told me about this game called COLLUDE. Now, COLLUDE is an HTML5 game available through Steam. And it has buttery smooth controls, like better controls than I ever would have thought were possible with an HTML5 game. In a lot of ways, I'd compare it to Hyperlight Drifter, with an aesthetic that's relatively faithful to the Super Nintendo, aside from some post-processing effects. I did a live stream where I played the game just a couple days ago, and you can check it out on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/thelinuxgamer. There's a playlist of all of my live streams archived there. I was also able to get GTA 5 running through Proton, which is pretty cool. You can check that out as well. But I want to know what you think. Have you played COLLUDE? You can leave me a comment on the show notes over on Patreon, and the show notes are available to everyone, not just my Patreon contributors. Next up, we have the PS1 Classic, or the PlayStation Classic. I'm not sure exactly what they're going for here. It includes 20 games, and a couple of them have been announced, but not all of them. Final Fantasy VII, Tekken 3, Wild Arms, Jumping Flash, Ridge Racer Type 4, and other, quote, legendary titles. More games will be announced prior to launch, which is happening on December 3rd for $100 US. Details aren't clear here, so I'm wondering, what system on a chip is this device going to run on? Will it run Linux as its operating system? But more importantly, how quickly will this thing be jailbroken? Being able to sideload games onto my Super Nintendo Classic Edition has been an absolute joy, and I would really like to sideload a couple games on here and maybe delete a few that I don't give a crap about, like Final Fantasy VII. I do like Wild Arms, though. That's a great game if you haven't played it. Check it out. Man, I'm like barreling through these today. Next up, we have some sad news. Telltale is closing its doors. Telltale produced some awesome games, and they're best known for their licensed titles. One of my favorites was Strong Bad's awesome game for cool guys. One of my favorite of theirs was Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people. I'm a huge Homestar Runner fan. I can do the Homestar Runner voice. Hello, this is Homestar Runner. It could be his cousin, though. I don't know if it's actually Homestar. But anyway, I'm a huge fan of Homestar Runner, so I'm saddened by this news. Telltale was also known for their very popular and wildly successful Walking Dead series. I never played it, but I've heard a lot of people say that it's a great game. In fact, the first game I've heard a lot of people say was their favorite game of all time. And it's really sad because, Telltale had over 200 people working for them when they closed their doors just this week. To quote Kevin Bruner, who is a co-founder of the studio, "Today, I'm mostly saddened for the people who are losing their jobs at a studio they love. And I'm also saddened at the loss of a studio that greenlit crazy ideas that no one else would consider. I'm comforted a bit knowing there are now so many talented people and studios creating games in the evolving narrative genre. While I'm looking forward to those games and new developments and continuing to contribute, I will always find a Telltale game to have a unique offering." Now, personally, I'm sad to hear the talented folks at the studio have lost their jobs, and hopefully they'll be able to find other studios that can hire them on. It's always sad when companies shutter and leave people without a livelihood. That's always been a concern of mine, and it really sucks. I wish that I could do something for these guys. So, a farmers collective in California signed away their rights to repair. This is a disgusting and horrifying story. This kind of stuff in the United States of America should not happen. Period. Okay. All right. Let's get into the details here. California's biggest lobbying group just signed away their farmers' rights to access or modify the source code of any equipment that they own. They represent 2.5 million Californian agriculture jobs. Now, and what happened was the California Farm Bureau gave up the right to be able to purchase repair parts without going through a dealer. This is insane to me. If you read like the details of the agreement that they signed, basically they're not allowed to reset immobilizer systems, which is like a software lockout that prevents, combines and tractors from moving if the if N is set to false. Holy crap. They're not allowed to reprogram electronic control units or engine control modules. Why not? They're not allowed to change equipment or engine settings that might negatively affect emissions or safety, and they're not allowed to download or access the source code of any proprietary embedded software. If you don't have the right to modify something that you own, then you don't own that thing. And that is absolutely fundamentally un-American, or un-Western culture if you're not from America. Personally, I question the wisdom of allowing companies to keep source code for critical infrastructure like this proprietary. I mean, if it's agriculture, if it's public works, if it's government software, or if it's general like infrastructure stuff, why do we let them keep this stuff proprietary? Why isn't it mandatory that it's open source? How do we? I don't. I could like rant about this for hours. This kind of stuff makes me furious. I want to know what you think. Are you all about the right to repair? Do you think that I'm kind of going off the rails when I say that critical infrastructure should be open source? Let me know. Show notes are available to everyone, like I said earlier. Oh my God. This kind of stuff, man. It makes me furious. All right, anyway, let's move on. Nvidia released the RTX line. The RTX 2070, 2080, and 2080 Ti. And according to the benchmarks that I've seen, the 2080 Ti is about 30% faster than the 2080, which is about 30% faster than the 1080 Ti, which is about 30% faster than the 1080. So overall, it's like a 60% performance improvement if you go from the 1080 to a 2080 Ti. I think I could be wrong about my math there. I think it's 60% improvement in speed. But also, I've read some other benchmarks that say that it's not that impressive of a leap, especially when you consider that there isn't anything except for tech demos out that really embrace the technology that NVIDIA is pushing here, which is the real-time ray tracing stuff. And this tech is impressive. I mean, it allows light to bounce around a scene and behave naturally, and that includes like organic looking reflections that don't require like crazy amounts of post-processing. So these Turing series cards have a USB port in them, which allow you to connect up a headset, a virtual reality headset, and it takes advantage of the card's hardware that way. Essentially, making everything streamlined. And that's pretty cool. That's exciting. But like a lot of people are saying that the cost of the 2080 Ti is just not justified by the performance gain. And I can understand that. And I can also understand why the real-time ray tracing stuff is being pushed here. We're coming up on the next generation of consoles, and that's going to be like the real differentiator. Mark my words. New consoles are all going to have this real-time ray tracing stuff in them. And that's why it's being pushed out right now, to work out the kinks on PC where, people expect this kind of stuff, and also to bring the cost of manufacturing this specific hardware down. This is all going to be stuff that's included in the next iteration of consoles. Or I really think that, and that's why this is all happening right now. But I want to know what your theories are about this, because I could be wrong about that. You can hit me up on YouTube or on Twitter at the Linux Gamer, or you can send me an email, gardiner@heavyelement.io. Let me know what you think, and I might read your comments in the next podcast. All right, this hits close to home. CBS has ordered Stage 9 to cease and desist. See, I don't understand why companies do this. You have a group of fans who love your property, and then you just kick them. You kick them. Why would you do this, CBS? This doesn't make any sense. It's a decidedly corporate move, and CBS okay, let me back up a little bit if you don't know what I'm talking about. Stage 9 is a Unreal Engine recreation of the Enterprise D from Star Trek. It was made available for Linux, Mac, and Windows, and it even supported VR headsets. So you could, like, hypothetically, if you had a VR headset, you could put it on and walk onto the bridge of the Enterprise D. But it wasn't just a bridge. You could walk anywhere in the ship, just about. And I have tried it, and I still have the files on my computer, but it didn't perform great on Linux, which kind of sucks. But it was still cool, you know? And cool things deserve to exist. It makes me really mad when companies decide that cool things shouldn't exist and then exert their tenuous intellectual property rights and abuse the copyright system in a way to give them a monopoly on a franchise that they think they own. I believe personally that if something becomes if a word like Kleenex becomes synonymous with the object, then the company should not be able to use Kleenex as a brand anymore. And I think it's the same thing with Star Trek or Star Wars or any of these enormous franchises that have huge cultural impact. Once it becomes embraced at a level where like everyone says, "Beam me up, Scotty," or "May the Force be with you," guess what? Companies can't own that stuff anymore. That's what I think. I could be crazy. What do you think? How does this affect your appreciation for Star Trek as a franchise? Does it make you long for the days when CBS was not the steward of Star Trek? Let me know. All right, let's move on. Another major piece of crap news. Google is suppressing information. And what information is that? Well, it's the I don't know if you've heard about this. This is called the Dragonfly project, and it's basically the leadership at Google. They are colluding with the Chinese government censors, and this comes from a report from The Intercept. And don't get upset that I called it collusion, because that's what it is. That's objectively what it is. Now, here's the thing. The leadership at Google are furious about details of this project being leaked. And there was a memo flying around, authored by a Google engineer who was asked to work on the project. And then he disclosed that the search system would require users to log in to perform searches, track their location, and would share the resulting history with a Chinese partner who would have unilateral access to the data. That's from The Intercept. Now, I have a couple questions. First of all, how can Google ensure that no American's data is going to get swept up in this dragnet? Jack Paulson quit Google. He was a former employee. He was a researcher there. And he basically resigned from Google over their China ambitions. And he stated it in a letter. Google's work on Dragonfly aims to aid Beijing's efforts to censor and monitor its online citizens, or its citizens online. Now, I have to give props to Ted Cruz for his line of questioning at a hearing last week about consumer data privacy. He asked Google's chief privacy officer, Keith Enright, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He asked him about Dragonfly, and Mr. Enright said, "We're not close to launching a search engine product in China." And then he proceeded to dance around the question, several times weaseling his way out of actually straightforwardly answering Ted Cruz's line of questioning. I was quite pleased with Senator Cruz's line of questioning, but I do wish that Mr. Enright's feet had been held a little closer to the fire. So how does this affect us? I mean, should Google be allowed to get into bed with Chinese censors? And how do you think it's going to affect your right to online privacy? Frankly, we live in a global world, and there's no guarantee that your data won't get swept up in one of these draconian dragnets. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment on YouTube, or hit me up on Twitter, or shoot me an email, gardiner@heavyelement.io. No matter what you think, I want to hear from you, and I might read one of your responses in the next episode. But if you believe in the work that I do, head over to patreon.com/thelinuxgamer and support the show there. Then don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. This has been the Off Topical Podcast. It's been real, and let's do it again.